Alan, thank you very much for attending today. We appreciate your time and we are excited to learn a little bit about user experience.
All right. So today, I'm Alan Cohn, and I'm going to talk about user experience and my career in user experience. First, I'm going to go into a little bit about my company and me. So I work for Community Blood Center Community Tissue Services. And what this is it's basically a blood bank and a tissue bank, but we work as one company. So on the blood side, anytime you see like blood drives, or there's also the option to give blood in downtown Dayton, I'm sure other branches too, then we basically take that blood and we distribute it to local area hospitals. On the tissue side, we are able to take in tissue donors and then create both life-sustaining and life-saving grafts. And for each single donor that comes in, we can impact up to 250 different lives. And as such, we're also the largest tissue bank in North America, which is pretty cool. Now, none of that stuff has to do with tech, really. So why am I a lead software developer and why am I here talking? Well, that's because at our company, we actually have our own internal IT department, which includes people like on the help desk and infrastructure side, but then it also includes people like me, who's a developer. And then we also have business intelligence people too. So the reason why this ends up being such a great match at this particular company is because a lot of our customers, which are basically other departments, so people who do manufacturing or sales and things like that, they have a lot of very unique requirements just based on the type of stuff that they deal with. And so then we're able to learn directly about their processes and build something perfect for them. I started with the company back in 2018 as just a systems analyst, which at our particular company can be anything from like a developer thing up through like data analysis type stuff. And then since then, I kind of worked my way up to now I actually run my own development team. So the whole reason why I wanted to talk about user experience is because it's something that I feel like if you were to just search it online, you get a bunch of different answers. And it's really hard to get a good idea about something that's not really tangible. So I put up this photo, which note is purposefully nonsensical. And the whole idea is that it's just kind of this inside joke of anytime you look up information on user experience and user interfaces, it's hard to know what it is. So I'm going to break it down at a really basic level, just give some really basic info so it's easy to follow along. So user experience in itself is simply just how it actually is to use a product. And this can be something as simple as your unique experience in selecting videos on Netflix, or even if we look at the natural world, say something like peeling an orange, right? Like in orange, it can either be very easy to peel, a peel coming off in one piece, or it can be kind of frustrating and there's like a bunch of little pieces that come off and you might get juices on your hands. So all of those are actually user experiences of that product. And so in general, a good user experience makes you want to use the product again. You know, it's something you use it, it's so nice, it makes something easier, it's good. A bad user experience, however, makes you dread using the product again. I say dread rather than not want to, because sometimes, particularly in corporations, users are often forced to use like one specific product. So while, you know, in your personal life, you may have an option between a couple different things to complete a task, oftentimes the company will say, hey, this is what we're using. So sometimes people just get stuck with stuff. And you definitely, you know, want your products to always be something people want to use rather than not. So just the overall goal in user experience is to make products a pleasure to use. If we jump to the more, let's say, software technical side of things, I'm going to give an example about a website that everyone is probably familiar with, and that would be YouTube. So I am showing YouTube from 2007. Currently, you'll notice it's very different from the YouTube of today, but this will give a good example of kind of the differences and advances in user experience over, I guess, 14 years. So the first thing you see is that it's very, very busy, right? Like you still have the video there, but it really only takes up half the screen. And then there's just a bunch of other stuff on there, like URLs, embed codes, things about saving to favorites and groups and sharing and posting videos. And it's all over the place. And the focus is simply not on the content the user came for. So while functionally this works, you can watch a video, you can share videos, you can do all that, the user experience could be better. So if we fast forward 14 years of development up through YouTube in 2021, right? This is what it looks like. It's very different, right? Video is front and center here because that's what most people come to YouTube to look for. They want to simply just watch videos. Now, I did cheat a little bit in that I'm actually showing you the theater view, which makes the video take up the entire width of the screen. But that's also something that just increases user experience as YouTube has added several new features related specifically to video watching. And that includes things like this theater view, or it includes even casting it to your TV. So that, again, the focus is actually on that user content rather than all these other possible things that you might want to do, but you're probably not there for. It's also much easier to find and share videos since basically all your options related to this video come up underneath. And so, particularly for sharing, if you want to share it, whether that's embedding it, posting it to Facebook, whatever, that's all under the share menu versus before, and I'll put them side by side, again, it's just kind of everywhere. So that's just a quick look at how user experience can change over time and how, you kind of start learning what's really good for your actual intended users. So I'll do some summary here about what is important for a good user experience. First, you want to find out what the customer or user actually wants and needs. And note that this might be something that's different from, your own opinions as a developer, because there's sometimes I want to do something one way, and I'll have people like my wife tell me that I've over-engineered it. I say, okay. So it's good to just talk to the customer and see how they actually want to use something. And you also want to get regular feedback throughout development. So this is something that we recently implemented at my company, and it saved us so much stress later on by basically we break up big projects into roughly like 3 phases. And at the end of each phase, we give a demo of everything that we've done so far. And usually it has some kind of tangible goals. So it'll be like, hey, we wanted to work on these set of pages or this function, and then we'll go show that off. And we have a user acceptance form that basically just a feedback form that we give to the customers actually using it. And we have them actually take our very much in development software, go play with it and see if that part functions like they expect it to. If it does, that's great, and they'll let us know. If it doesn't, then they'll also let us know. But it lets us fix problems early on, and it makes sure, again, just that their user experience is perfect because they're going to be the ones using it each and every day. Another thing is you want to be efficient in what you're doing. So that can be, from just making sure that load times and how long it actually takes to do different things is pretty quick, but also that, if there's some kind of feature that someone is going to use every single day, that should probably be fairly front and center rather than hidden behind a bunch of menus. If we go back to YouTube as an example, simply just watching the video, that's something that it's much more efficient now because it's front and center, and everything else kind of takes a back seat because you're there mostly to watch the video. The other thing you want is to always make sure anything is discoverable. Now, this is mostly because, you can write up the best documentation, you can give the best demos, but at the end of the day, users can only remember so much. And there will be times when they're in your application using it, and all of a sudden they need to do something that maybe they only occasionally do. Now, they could go look at the documentation, they could go ask someone, but that can take a lot of time. And, maybe they're not in a place where they can easily do that. So like at my company, they will be in clean rooms and they will be in a sterile environment. And it's not really feasible for them to take a break, go ask someone about a software issue, and then come back in. So instead, we always want to make things discoverable. So that means that, a user can reasonably look at, your application and then figure out what they, or how to do a task that they need to do, even if they don't explicitly remember how to do it. So now I've talked about kind of that part. I'll go into what it is that I actually do to make these kinds of things happen. So whenever I get a brand new project, the first thing I do is I work on the design of it. And this can be, drafting up in Photoshop or something as simple as just drawing it out on a whiteboard and trying to kind of play with how I think different parts of the application should work together. And this takes into a lot of account things that I heard when I was in initial meetings with, whoever the customer is or whichever department is actually using it. But also, taking into account their actual process, the actual forms that they may currently use, and then trying to kind of mesh all that into something that can be part of software. The next thing is then I actually get to programming. And this is the biggest part of my day, because I need to take all those kind of abstract ideas in design, and then I need to make it into some very tangible code. And while something might be easy to simply just say like, oh, like this page should go into this page, when you actually program that, there can be a bunch of different things that you have to remember, and you have to very carefully, work on to make sure that that experience actually works as you want it to. So this, again, by far is the biggest part of my particular day. I also have meetings, and this can be meetings talking about, what a product actually needs to be, or giving feedback on it. Or if I ever have any questions, I need clarification, I am very much able to go in and ask, hey, like, how exactly should this part work? I would say when I first started at my entry-level position, I had maybe one meeting every week or 2 weeks. But now that I'm more of like a lead developer, that's probably up to 3 meetings a week. So still not too heavy on meetings, but definitely they are a part of my day. Now, I've been very blessed in that I'm still able to do all of this remotely at home or at anywhere. My job really only requires a laptop and an internet connection. Now, I will say occasionally, and this is more due to the unique nature of my company, where we do a lot of essentially manufacturing. And so sometimes I do have to physically go into, the office and see something that can only happen there. But I'll say over the past like 18 months, I've only had to go in like 5 times. So this is a very remote friendly position. Now, if we look into why my company wants someone who works on user experience, there are several good reasons for this. First, time and efficiency matter a lot. If you have a user that does some very repetitive tasks, for several hours a day, if you can do anything to make that more efficient or take less time, that's a lot of savings over the course of an entire day across all the employees using this software. And likewise, if employees are able to do their job more easily, then they'll like working, they'll probably do a better job at it, and there will be higher employee retention, which at least right now is a big deal. Finally, I'm a kind of a bridge between users and the code. So the code is a very technical side that, no one else really other than me has to do anything with, but whatever the code is will directly impact the users. Meanwhile, the users are going to sit there and tell me, how they want something to work, but they have no idea about what the code is. And so I need to be this kind of bridge who can translate all of their requests into code. And then if they ask me something about how something works, then I have to take the ideas in the code and then be able to break it down in a non-technical way so the users can understand what's going on. So now I'll go into how I actually arrived at my job. I took a fairly non-traditional path to get there. So we'll start with education. I have an all but dissertation PhD in the biomedical sciences, which essentially means I did all the coursework, I went through the qualifying exams, and then I left the program, and I actually left the program for the job of my company. I have a master's degree in biological sciences, and I've got a bachelor's in neuroscience and biological sciences. Now, obviously, none of this is computer related. So you're probably like, well, okay, that's how you arrived at your job, but like, how does that help me? Right? Because I wouldn't suggest that everyone takes this path and then think that, oh, yes, they can also then immediately go into computer stuff. No, what helped me most from my education and why I think it was very important is because it taught me how to learn. The very first class of my undergrad degree, we were doing something that I guess was new at the time called active learning. And so the whole idea is that before class, you would read a chapter and you would answer some questions about content we would talk about in class. And then in the next class, we would have to teach that same content to a group of people that we were sitting by. What this ultimately did was it taught us how to learn things on our own. And that is a skill that I think anyone doing user experience or really anything computer related needs to learn and really needs to make a priority, because you're going to come across things all the time that, there's no real guide on how to do, and you have to figure it out kind of as you go along. The other thing that really helped with is how to take something very technical and then talk about that to a non-technical audience. This happened more in graduate school when I was doing biological research, where we get very technical if I was talking about stuff to my own lab. But, when I'd go to a more broad audience, like, well, no one cares about very, very specific things. They kind of want more of the general picture. And so learning how to do that directly translated into my current job, where I have to, again, be that bridge between the code and the users. So instead of talking about the education stuff, I'll say what actually got me the interview. And this is what I was actually told brought me in. So it was working part-time mostly on personal and professional development projects, like computer development projects throughout school. And this includes creating solutions for different problems that I had just using software development. One of the good examples of this that I had was when I was working in a biology lab. We had to count colonies of bacteria on a petri dish. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever done that in your biology classes anywhere or anything, but basically if you have a bunch of bacteria on a petri dish, you can get hundreds of different colonies, which are basically just little dots that you have to count up. That can take a significant amount of time, and it's kind of boring. So what I did was I created a software that basically lets you take a picture of the petri dish, and then it automatically counts up all the dots for you, or the colonies, which then would save me like 20 minutes whenever I'd have to do it. And so it was little projects like that, which, it's not some big, company that I started or anything. It's just a little project, but it's something that I was able to share, on my resume, that at least the interviewers in my company thought, oh, well, that's a really interesting, application of computer science. So, let's bring you in and talk some more about what it is you do. The other thing was really demonstrating that ability to learn. And again, this is something that schooling 100% helped me out with and gave me opportunities to really demonstrate. But, just really showing that no matter what it was, whether it was working on, things kind of in my own time as a hobby, or during school, showing some of the different projects that I had done, it was all just, again, demonstrating that I can kind of learn a wide variety of things. So you could put me into any situation and I would be able to learn and adapt and pick things up. So this is how you can actually arrive at your job for this. First, you should keep a public profile, whether that's on like GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket, which are basically places that you can store source code to your programs. And you just keep a public profile of all your projects. Now, this is something that HR probably won't really care about looking at, but whoever is going to be doing a technical part of your interview, and I can say from experience doing so, it's really hard to figure out when you're actually in the interview, like if someone can actually code or not. But if you had this profile of projects that had all your code already out there, before the interview, as the interviewer, I could go look at it and see, oh, okay, you've done, this kind of stuff, you've worked with these different languages, so you can code. I have no concerns about that. Next is just simply learn how to learn. Again, that's kind of the overall theme here, but hitting on it again, learn how to learn and just be willing to assess and apply new ideas. Now, note, there is kind of a caveat here, because a lot of times in tech, people get really excited about something that's new and like hot, but it does not mean to just kind of jump onto whatever is hot at the moment, because there's a lot of stuff, people will get really excited about, and ultimately it may not be a great option for your organization, or it may be far too much for things that you actually need. So while it's good to learn about things and kind of learn about how different projects may do something, it's not simply just jumping onto whatever seems most popular at the moment. And then also simply just think about things that your friends and your family like and dislike in products, because that will then help guide you, before you're really part of a company, to just understand the kinds of things that may be improved upon simply based on your own likes and dislikes. So, simply, I just have this kind of final slide of, is user experience for you? And first, do you like improving things? Do you constantly recognize ways something could be done better? Do you get a sense of accomplishment when people enjoy using something you created? And then, do you like to learn? These are all things that I think, if you answer yes to all of them, then user experience is the fantastic option, because you will be improving things, and it will actually be a skill that you can recognize ways that things could be done better. And then I know something that I love is seeing other people use my finished projects to help them with their jobs, and that they actually enjoy using them. Like that, it just makes everything very, very fulfilling when I see that in use and everyone's very happy. And then, of course, learning again is critical here. And then I guess with that, I can open up the floor for questions.
Alex, this is really informational. Thank you. I learned a lot today. I didn't actually know very much about user experience. It was when I left the IT world about 6-7 years ago, it was just something new on the horizon talking about that. So It's really changed a lot. So thank you. I've learned a lot. So I opened up the chat for people if people would like to ask questions. In the meantime, while we're getting some coming through, one question I do have is, who do you typically work with? I know you work at home, but on your daily basis, who do you normally talk with? Do you talk with business requirements people, or do you normally work with developers? Who do you normally get your information from?
So for my day to day, mostly it's with my development team, or it can be the IT director, and that's usually just going over kind of any projects that other people have talked about, and we kind of discuss if we should work on them, or if it's within our scope or not. If we go beyond that, people immediately outside of my core group, it would then mostly be with whichever department we are actively working on projects with.
Okay. All right, great. Now, somebody asked if UI is the same as UX.
Yes. So they are related. So like that nonsensical image I showed at first, it had UI and UX. And UI is a way that you can create a good user experience, like with YouTube, 2007 and now, that's largely a user interface change. But simply just UI is not the full user experience, because user experience will go into how easy is it to do different tasks, and does it load quickly, and does it actually do what you want it to do?
All right, great. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right. This is really informational. We appreciate your time today and sharing all your knowledge and your background. I find your background very fascinating. I actually have one more question about your background. What
Yeah.
made you decide that you did want to do the switch?
So
That you were going towards the medical field, then what made you
I
do the
was.
switch?
So even back in high school, I knew I was either going to do something with computer science or biology. I ended up doing biology. I guess I don't really know specifically why I started going that way, but I did love it, and I still do love it. But over time, it became very clear that for my particular career goals, I wanted something that was more part of a company versus an academics. And I wanted something that was a little more stable, at least. So, like, I mean, particularly right now, I mean, we just had a whole pandemic and all of that. My company never had an issue, uh, with staffing or being open or anything. Like it, I mean, it hit us a little bit, obviously, but not like some other places did. Meanwhile, a lot of my friends who were in the biological sciences field, they got hit pretty hard with trouble finding jobs and things like that. So that's largely what it was. And then also some funding differences that occurred as well.
Okay, great. There's one more last question here. It's from a student. Andrew wants to know what can I do to jumpstart to this career?
Yes. Yeah. So what I would suggest is to probably just learn a programming language, and whether that is something like HTML and kind of JavaScript and CSS, which is more of the web side of stuff, or if you wanted to do like actually on kind of machine stuff, so like Golang or Python. One of those will help you tremendously, because I think regardless of where you go, if it's something related to computer science, at a minimum, understanding how a programming language works will help you in any of those fields.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Well, it's a little after 4. I will let you get your day back. We appreciate your time so much. It's really been informative. And I appreciate everybody attending today and asking some great questions. Next week, we will see you all again. Next week, we'll be talking to an IT director and data scientists. We'll find a little bit more about their jobs. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.